High above North Vietnam, Captain Steve Ritchie is in the fight of his life. There's a MiG-21 on his scope, and in the lethal skies of MiG Alley, one wrong move means you don't go home. He's already got kills under his belt, but this engagement, this is the one that will make him a legend. But to truly understand how Ritchie and his weapons systems officer, Captain Charles DeBellevue, turned the tables on this dogfight, we need to rewind to the start of the mission, a flight known as Buick 1. Welcome back, everyone, to Aero Exploration and another installment of This Week in Aviation History. This time around, we journey to the Vietnam War and tell the story of Captain Ritchie and Buick 1. So, it's 1971, and the era over Vietnam has reached its fever pitch. In March, North Vietnam launched the Easter Offensive, a massive invasion on the South. The United States responded with Operation Linebacker, a relentless air campaign aimed at crippling the North. Now, unlike the heavily restricted Rolling Thunder campaign from years before, Linebacker took the gloves off. The goals here were clear: destroy the rail lines, obliterate their supply depots, and most importantly, sweep the North Vietnamese Air Force from the sky. Those skies were amongst the most dangerous in the world, defended by a dense web of Soviet-made surface-to-air missiles and a plethora of anti-aircraft guns. And then there was the MiGs. So the tip of the spear at the time for the U.S. Air Force was the McDonnell Douglas F-4 Phantom. The Phantom was a formidable machine, a massive twin-engine, two-seat fighter bomber that could exceed Mach 2. While it wasn't as nimble as its main opponent, it was a heavyweight brawler. Its biggest advantage was its powerful engines, which inspired the slogan, "Speed is life." It also had advanced radar and the capability to carry up to 8 air-to-air missiles, which also helped it earn its title. In the backseat of the aircraft was a weapons systems officer, a second brain and another set of eyes whose primary job was to manage the complex radar and missile systems. This partnership was critical for survival of the crew. Facing them would be the Soviet-built MiG-21. It's small, it's agile, and it's incredibly hard to detect. The MiG-21 was a pure interceptor. This aircraft was the scalpel where the Phantom was a sledgehammer. Now, the North Vietnamese pilots, guided by ground controllers with sophisticated radar, would use the MiG's agility to make lightning-fast slashing attacks. They'd fire their shots and escape before the heavier Phantom could retaliate. This was a deadly chess match, pitting American technology against Vietnamese tactics and resolve. Now into this cauldron stepped two men who would define the word ace: Captain Steve Ritchie, the pilot, and Captain Charles DeBellevue, the weapons officer. They'd be flying with the legendary 555th Tactical Fighter Squadron, or the Triple Nickel. Now these two were already a lethal team. Ritchie was a driven Air Force Academy graduate. He was known as a fiercely dedicated pilot who had already shot down 4 MiGs. DeBellevue was his perfect match, a master of the Phantom's complex systems. Now their teamwork was so seamless that DeBellevue would later say, "I know what Steve is thinking on a mission and can almost accomplish whatever he wants before he asks." With 4 kills already, they were on the verge of history. Just one more, and Ritchie would become the Air Force's first ace of the war. So it's August 28, 1972, and the mission board at Udom Royal Thai Air Force Base in Thailand laid out just another day at the office. There was a major strike on the board that would head north of Hanoi. Ritchie and DeBellevue were assigned to lead Buick Flight, which is a 4-ship formation of F-4s on a MiG combat air patrol. Their job wasn't to drop bombs, their job was to hunt. They were the shield for the bombers. sent to fly ahead of the main forces to find and destroy any enemy fighter that dared to challenge the raid. Their flight path would take them deep into enemy territory, a place where danger was constant. Every second in the air was calculation of risk versus reward. As the lead aircraft, call sign Buick 1, Ritchie and DeBellevue weren't just responsible for their own jet, but for the other 3 Phantoms in their flight. Now, as they crossed into North Vietnam, a familiar tension filled the cockpit. Their eyes were glued to the skies, their ears tuned to the radios, and listening for calls from radar aircraft that gave them an early warning of enemy fighters. In the back seat, DeBellevue's entire world was a green glow of the radar scope. His hands would expertly work the controls. He had contact, a single blip, head-on, and closing fast. This is the moment where all of their training, all of the synergy between the pilot and the weapons officer will pay off. Ritchie would later recall that recent intelligence briefings had pointed out a change in Vietnamese tactics. The MiGs were flying higher than usual. So, trusting that intelligence, he pushed Buick flight into a climb, pulling them into a perfect position for an attack. Ritchie would later say, "I don't think the MiG pilot ever really saw us." The North Vietnamese pilot was likely just following directions from his ground controller, flying an intercept path, completely oblivious to the 4 F-4 Phantoms maneuvering into a textbook firing position right above him. DeBellevue's calm voice will cut through the cockpit tension, feeding Ritchie a constant stream of data, range, altitude, aspect. He had a solid radar lock. The prey was in its trap, and it was time to spring it. What happened next is a textbook example of F-4 tactics. With the MiG-21 flying right at them, a head-on missile shot was risky, so Ritchie made a critical decision. He made the call and fired 2 AIM Sparrow missiles. Now, these first 2 shots weren't actually meant to kill. They were fired out of parameters on purpose, to force the MiG pilot's hand. The goal was to make him react, to make him turn and to show them his tail. As the smoke trails from the 2 Sparrows screamed past the MiG, the enemy pilot did exactly what they'd hoped. He broke hard and banking into a turn to dodge those missiles. This is exactly the mistake that they were waiting for. As the MiG turned, Ritchie rolled his huge F-4 right behind it, instantly turning a head-on pass into a tail chase. He had just slammed the door on the MiG's escape route and was now perfectly positioned in the kill zone. DeBellevue held the radar lock, and Ritchie squeezed the trigger again. A 3rd Sparrow leaped off its rails, and it missed. But he didn't hesitate. He fired the 4th and final missile, and it flew true. The missile itself closed the gap in a heartbeat. Meanwhile, the crew of Buick 3, flown by Captain John Madden, watched as the Sparrow slammed into MiG-21. The jet exploded in a ball of fire and started tumbling towards the jungle below. From the very first radar blip to the final fireball, this engagement was a masterclass in modern air combat. It wasn't some dramatic, close-in turning fight from the older days. This was a calculated, brutally efficient kill done from high altitude and long range. That was number 5 for Steve Ritchie. He was now officially the United States Air Force's first and only pilot ace of the Vietnam War. When they landed, they were met with a hero's welcome. Crew Chief Sergeant Reggie Taylor was the first one up the ladder to shake their hands. He made sure to credit the ground crew, pointing out that he got his 1st and 5th kills in the exact same jet. While Ritchie became the Air Force's pilot ace, DeBellevue would rack up 2 more kills with another pilot, finishing the war with 6 victories and becoming the highest scoring American ace of the conflict. Their partnership proved that in the F-4 Phantom, the 2-man crew was more than just the sum of its parts. It was a single, deadly weapon system of man and machine. So, the story of Buick 1 is more than just a number. It marks a key moment in the history of aerial warfare. It showed the world that the F-4 Phantom, when flown by a perfectly synced crew, could beat the nimble MiG-21 by playing to its own strengths. Better radar, powerful missiles, and smart, disciplined tactics. It was a victory for the training, technology, and incredible nerve of the men who flew into the heart of danger, day after day. Well, thanks for joining me on this look back through aviation history. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more dives into legendary pilots and planes, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell. And let me know down in the comments what pieces of aviation history I should tackle next. Thanks again for joining me on this installment of This Week in Aviation History, and we'll see you next time right here on Aero Exploration.